Are you alive right now? What does it mean to be alive? How do we know what in nature, what in the world is having a conscious experience and what in the world is just following the laws of physics? Welcome to Cave Light, the #1 channel on YouTube dedicated to understanding consciousness. Today, we're going to be trying to answer some of these questions and trying to come up with an idea of what is actually alive and what is just physics. Now, to do this, we are going to be referring to a foundational paper in the field of cognitive science. This paper is from 1943. It is titled Behavior, Purpose, and Teleology by Rosenbluth, Weiner, and Bigelow. I'll have a link to the PDF down below. Now, the basis of this paper, as I said, is trying to understand what is alive and what isn't. So the first thing that you might think of when you think of something that is alive is, does it move? Because we move ourselves, we see other things that move and we may think that they are living. So for example, let me just get this. Here's just a little dog toy. Now, this clearly is not alive, but it can move. It just moved through the air. But we, of course, recognize that it's not alive because we can trace back that movement to me throwing it in the air. It wasn't the object itself that was responsible for the movement. We can track that responsibility back to me. So the first thing that the paper says is that, okay, in order for the behavior to be classified as active, the action itself has to come from the object itself. So in that case of the movement of this little toy through the air, we recognize that the action was not coming from the object, it was coming from me. So, not alive. But what about something like a clock? Clocks are able to move on their own, but we also recognize that they're not alive. Why is that? Well, it's because they don't move with a purpose. They simply, just keep twisting and turning and turning and turning, but the clock doesn't have a specific goal in mind, right? Okay, so clocks, not alive. Now, what about something that does move with a purpose? Now, this paper came out in 1943, so one of the technologies that just came out were torpedoes. Now, torpedoes can track objects underground and actually move towards them. So now this torpedo that was shot out of a submarine has sort of an idea of where to move to. Now we can understand that, okay, the actual movement of the torpedo is not from the submarine, it is from the torpedo itself. So it has a purpose, and it has a goal, and it is moving towards that goal. But would we say that the torpedo is then alive? Well, not really. Because the thing that it is lacking is a predictive mind. So although the torpedo is moving towards a goal, it doesn't have a complex enough understanding of the world to develop a theory of where its target may move to in the future. It is simply stuck within the present moment. Now, there are other things that have a predictive mind. For example, a cat as it is chasing a mouse. Now, when a cat chases a mouse, it of course follows where the mouse is going, but cats are smart and they can predict where the mouse will be going in the future. So they then have this next level of consciousness to understand things within the time axis, if that makes any sense. So instead of just seeing things in space, they also are able to think in terms of time. Now they can think, okay, the mouse is here in this moment in space-time, and they can imagine where it will be in the future, so then they will direct their actions towards there instead of just following where the mouse goes. So this ability to predict, to run simulations in your mind and predict what will happen, this gives you another advantage, and this makes you a bit more alive. Now, can you get even more alive than this predictive action? Yes, you can. For example, if you are able to predict things with multiple variables, not only predict something moving in one dimension and predict where it will be in future space-time, you're able to predict something moving, and you're able to imagine what that moving thing may do. So now not only are you predicting the actual movement and you are running the simulation of where it will go, you're also running the simulation of what it's going to do, so you can improve your prediction or simulation of the future. Now, an example of this is, let's say you are trying to throw a ball to a moving target. Let's say you're a quarterback, you're playing football, and you have a runner running this way and that way. Now you have to make two predictions. One, throw a ball, and you have to imagine where the ball is going to end up within a certain period of time. And you also have to imagine where the runner is going to be, so you can coordinate those two movements together. Now, another example of this might be in the game of chess. You can try to predict where your opponent is going to move their next move, but if you're a good chess player, you also want to think about where they're going to make future moves. And it's kind of a game of predictions, and it's a game of understanding how the mind of your opponent really works, and you really try to outwit each other like that. So chess is another example of kind of expanding your mind to make those predictions. Now, an example of this in nature may be found in chimpanzees. They are able to run simulations of what they think their fellow chimps might be doing. For example, if they see another chimp hiding their food somewhere, they're able to predict that that other chimpanzee will go back to that spot looking for their food. So they kind of have a theory of mind that, okay, not only can I remember where the food is, they also understand that this other thing will remember where the food is. And that takes sort of an extra dimension of thought. Another example of this is in ravens. When they are hiding their own food, they can look around and see if other ravens see them. And if there are other ravens around, they will then take that food and try to hide it somewhere else, because they understand that their food might get stolen by another raven. Another example is in wolves and in wolf packs when they're hunting animals. Not only do they make those predictions, like I was talking about earlier with the cat and mouse, of where their prey might be heading towards, but they also are able to predict where their fellow wolves will be going, so that they can kind of coordinate their efforts together to try and push their prey into a trap, basically. So those are just some examples. Now, of course, we recognize all those animals as being alive. We recognize the cat as being alive, the mouse as being alive. Another example of this is an amoeba, which is a single-celled organism. They're kind of like the torpedo, in which they can sense a food source nearby, and so they just go towards the food source. But they have no understanding of where that food may be going in the future. They're not able to run that simulation in their cell, I guess, in their mind of their nucleus or whatever. They're only able to sense where it is and then go towards it. So are they alive? I would say yes. But does that mean that the torpedo is alive as well? I don't know. I wouldn't go that far. Now, we recognize ourselves as being alive because not only can we move around, not only can we create goals for ourselves within space-time. For example, if I have the goal to take a sip of this mate, then I can move and direct my body to fulfill that goal with a purpose. But we can imagine a possible artificial intelligence or possible alien intelligence that is able to make predictions beyond human capabilities. We are only able to think so far into the future. We're only able to simulate the future so much that we are kind of limited by the hardware of our anatomies. However, things like AI, things like possible alien anatomies, they could run far more complex simulations, which would sort of make them more alive than we are. So I think all of this really just makes us have to reassess what we consider to be living, and we just have to remember that we are on a spectrum here. We are not at the end of the spectrum, and it is very, very possible for things to be wildly beyond us within this spectrum of cognition, of aliveness, of consciousness itself. Thank you all for watching. I hope you guys learned something. I know this was a bit of a ramble, but I'm going to try to make some more videos like this and be a little more consistent. So might be a bit more rambly, but you know, as we make more videos, as we improve, we will get better. So if you made it this far, leave a like down below. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for more talks like this about consciousness, and I hope to see you in the next one. Peace out, guys. Stay curious.